Take it away, Nabanita.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. This is Nabanita here, and today I'm going to talk to you about building and scaling social impact ventures. So, yeah, let me share my screen. I have it briefly. All righty. Okay. Yeah, so can you see my screen well?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, so a little bit about me. So back in 2016, I built this Chrome extension which can detect fake news on the internet called Project Fib. And it got a lot of traction all over the web. It was published on Business Insider, Washington Post, Mashable, and multiple other news publications worldwide. And I built this actually at a hackathon at Hack Princeton, and we also got the Google Moonshot Award. And currently, I'm working on another venture, which is my foundation. It's called Nabanita Foundation, and we are also Forbes brand contributor. Now, through that, I basically built this initiative called returnships.org. It basically helps caregivers return to the workforce after they had a career gap. Now, the way the entire initiative started is how that I was helping a family member return back to the workforce after they had around 20 years of career gap, and that's when I was kind of providing them with all the resources. I'm kind of bridging them the gap between them being in the kitchen thinking about, hey, I want to return to the workforce, and then actually being ready to sit at the interview table and interview and return to the workforce. And I saw that there was no other venture which was doing that. Like all of the ventures that existed in that particular space, it was for people who are ready to kind of interview, ready for all these opportunities, and then basically return back to the workforce, but nobody was kind of bridging the gap to prepare them to basically go for these opportunities or put all of those opportunities in a one-stop shop way. Now, returnships.org, in the span of 9 months that we have been live and active, has expanded to 92 countries, helping caregivers from 92 countries return to the workforce. Well, I was also able to represent returnships.org on all of these platforms, including Power to Fly, University of Maryland, UNICEF, Globant, UNESCO, Hack Princeton, multiple other places. Now, so what are my key takeaways to basically when you do have a project or a hackathon idea, how do you build out that social impact venture? So I think what really worked for me, the first was finding the idea that you're trying to build, especially when it's a social impact project. As you can see, I've listed a list of 17 SDG, that is Sustainable Development Goals by United Nations. These are around all of these particular categories. So when you're thinking about a social impact project, you can kind of align it to one of these SDGs basically. And then that could be your first way of finding that idea. Also, I believe that when you do find, when you're looking for an idea, instead of thinking about, what big idea people are looking at and I can build, always look at, when it especially comes to social impact, look at things that bother you on a day-to-day basis. Maybe something that is a huge problem in your community, or something that you've seen growing up in your country or on in your particular area that people struggle with, and try to solve that one particular problem that you face in a day-to-day basis. And I'm sure that by solving that one particular problem, you would be building something which is going to impact millions of lives. So I think that is always the best way of finding that idea. And other ways could be looking at these SDGs and kind of trying to think, brainstorm and think about how can you make these areas particularly better. Like for example, no poverty. What can you build around in that particular space that can facilitate reducing poverty levels? Or what can you do that can reduce zero hunger? How can you innovate that? How can you add tech, recent innovations and into these particular areas? And I think that could be your first start at building out a social impact venture. Then the next is kind of defining why you are building it, because I think that is super important, especially if you can tie a purpose and a mission statement to your social impact venture. I think that will really resonate with a lot of different people. Like for example, at one of the hackathons, I built out this particular project which was around ID checks. So basically, people, everybody below the age of 18, like once they turn 18, they have to always carry around IDs everywhere, right, to get around. So my idea was basically that can I create a virtual system, like an app which can kind of facilitate easier entry. And the way I kind of went about it, like even at the hackathon, I pitched it like with my experience I had of like carrying IDs and losing it. And then I also, asked so many different people. So I always tie whatever I'm building with a particular mission or purpose, and I try to drive through that. And I think that really helps, like knowing clearly why are you building this. Then the next part is, I believe that instead of making things like 1% better, like try to make things 1,000% better. I know it sounds like, how do I do that? Like, I think that how you can do that is you can try to pick like a harder problem than an easier problem. Because what I have noticed from my perspective is, every time I've tried to compete in a domain space where there's a lot of, it's an easier problem, there's already a lot of competitors try to compete in that space. So it's kind of saturated already. So even if you make things like 1% or 10% better in that particular space, it's often harder to get like a lot of traction, especially when you're starting off. So always picking like the harder problem, I think it always helps. Because then even if you make things a little bit better, it makes things a lot more better, and you can get a lot of traction that way. Like for example, when I built this particular project of like converting text to VR at MIT Media Labs hackathon, basically this was something that was not built before. And a lot of people had not seen this concept before. And the moment we built that, there were like so many people at our booth. We got invitations to multiple VR festivals, to Harvard VR Lab, and different other conventions. And I think just being able to visualize that end to end was amazing. So another feedback I have for you when you start building out like a harder problem is, make sure you scope the problem well. Like for example, instead of building every part of it, like try to see if there are smaller parts of it that's already been built, and then kind of go about it. And then the next is of course, defining and surveying your customer, especially when it comes to social impact. You can kind of build something for, like I mentioned, if it is for a particular community, you can put it in the hands of your community members, and then you can basically use their testimonials as a way to kind of validate your product. So that can only happen when you kind of put those like soft launch features into the hands of these people, and then kind of see where their pain points are they willing to use your product, what kind of value you're getting, what kind of traction you're getting. You can put it in, like ask them, and then if you get certain feedback that certain features are more preferred than the other, then make sure you kind of incorporate that. So I think, and then also when you go to like pitch anywhere, right, instead of saying that, hey, everybody is my customer, you can pick like a particular segment of people who are your customers, and you can kind of redefine based on that, that this product is particularly for these kind of people, and you can even make them the face of your product. So that can resonate with a lot of people in the community, and help more, like reach more people. Now, next thing I know, a lot of you already know, is like having a business plan, of course, even for social impact venture, especially even if you're thinking of running an NGO, you will need like revenue and money. And oftentimes you'll have to go to companies or different organizations to have that. So having this business plan will really help, like the problem, why you're building, the solution, what you're building, some key metrics on, how you're planning to impact certain people or certain segment of the community, and what you're trying to impact, what are your goals. It could be like helping, let's say, 1,000 homeless people get off the street, or it could be something like helping 50 women go back to workforce. It could be anything. Like define those key metrics on what you're trying to achieve, like set those goals and try to meet them, and kind of also showcase that when you're building out your product. Then also talk about how your product is unique than everything else in the market. I think that applies to almost everything, showing that even though something is already out there, are you innovating in new space, or are you bringing innovation from other country into your space that doesn't exist already? Like, is it disruptive? Is it something that you're iterating innovation, like, and how does it differ from everything that's out there? I think that's super important. And then how are you better than all of the people around? Then think about some of the channels that you plan to kind of give out your go-to-market strategies, and how do you plan to find those people. So I think those are some of the aspects you can think about, going to these social impact conferences. Like for example, what I did was I went to a lot of like conferences regarding UNICEF, UNESCO, United Nations. I paired up with multiple local NGOs in my area about the work that I'm doing. And I think those are all go-to-market strategies, because that kind of helped put my product out there in the market and kind of use other people's, already following base. And then, of course, like I mentioned, like find out the customer segments of who are the people who will be using this particular product. Even like in NGOs, you will need like a cost structure or revenue streams, and how do you plan to scale and build this like NGO? Like for example, do you need company funding? Are you going to do crowdsourcing? Like all of these things are super important that you need to think about when you are building out like these social impact ventures. Now, like I mentioned, like when you're picking a hard problem, you have to like divide and conquer. Like for example, when I was building Project Fib, and it was like the first automated like in misinformation detecting platform in the internet, and that's why we got so much of traction at that point. And I think we didn't like build out everything end to end on our own. We kind of broke the problem smaller enough so that like smaller bits of it were already like solved by other people, but we were able to like put everything together in a way that made sense. Like for example, we applied a much more human approach to solving like detection of fake news. We thought that, okay, as a human being, what do? You basically find a particular news article when you're reading on the internet, and then when you're reading it, you kind of understand, is it suspicious or not? If it is suspicious, then you go on Google, you search other you use the heading from that news article or anything relevant from that news article. You search on Google, you try to find what other relevant sources are there that Google has returned, and then you basically click on that, you read that, and if that makes sense, like as in if that news is similar to what you just read, you say, okay, what I just read is actually true. Versus if something that is published is actually different from what you just read, you are like, okay, that's probably not true and this is probably fake. So we did the same way. We broke down the problem of text summarization, searching on Google, image like text similarity, then finding which all websites are online for certain time. So all of those things, we were like, smaller parts of it was already solved by different companies, but we kind of put all of those things together, and that's why we were able to like conquer such a difficult problem in such a shorter time, in like 24 hours at a hackathon. Now, like I mentioned, like it's super important to define where your money is coming from. Of course, like defining product pricing on how, like even if it's a new startup, like how much money would people be paying? Is it a subscription model? Is it like a one-time purchase? Define what exactly means, and then that will help you kind of put it in your revenue streams and to break even basically. Then the next is who will be paying for your particular product. Like define that, who are the like, especially when you're doing customer survey, I think that will really help you understand that who will be willing to, like it could be sometimes you can start off your product thinking that, okay, this particular person would be paying for my product, but it ends up like a completely different segment, and that's okay, and that only you can know by surveying them. Then also factor in all your development, logistics, hiring costs, especially when you're thinking about, how much money you would be needing to break even or reach profitability. And then think about like different funding sources like crowdfunding. You could put it on like different like GoFundMe's, or you can bootstrap completely on your own. You can even ask friends and family to pitch in, and there are also accelerator and VC route that you can go to, where you can ask people to, like you can raise funding by giving out like a certain amount of shares of your company to do these VCs or angel investors. Another thing I want to for you to consider is like, consider, do you really need to go to like VCs or angel investors, and or is it something that you can completely fund on your own? And if that is so, that like I think the better option is to just going on your own, because think about it, like the VCs and the angel investors that you do pick, they will be the people who will stick with you the longest apart from your co-founder in your company, right? Even when your company goes bigger and becomes $1 billion empire, So really evaluate who you do want to work with, especially somebody who fits your mission, and your somebody has like go for VCs or angel investors who have already funded or are in the particular space that is aligned with your social impact mission. And I think that that is also super important, and it will help you also get like press in general, because they can also connect you to other social impact like ventures in that particular space. Now, when you're pitching, you can also define your market share and valuation by just looking at who your competitors are at that space, and what kind of industry market share do they have, and what is it a multi-billion dollar industry or what it is. And I think often doing the comparative analysis can help you understand that what your business can be worth if you can build out like a good feature. Now, the next part of building out these ventures is, of course, hiring complementary skills. Like when you start this venture, of course, you just don't need developer. Like if you're somebody from tech, you just don't need just developers building out the product and that's it. You need somebody who is in good in sales, marketing, human resources, legal, like multiple of these areas. So make sure you hire those complementary skills if you do not have that already. And yeah, like make sure that you have like a robust team, because most of these VCs will be giving you money just based off the like they're more interested in the team oftentimes than the product, because of course like startups can often pivot multiple times, but your team will always stay. So make sure you pick that like diligently. Then next is like whenever you're going to the market and like telling your story, make sure you tell your story in a way like you pitch it in a way that you're telling a story. That is super important. Like for example, when I pitched returnships.org everywhere, I kind of told the story of how I was helping my family member and what all struggles we had together of helping her return back to the workforce, and how I built out returnships.org. And that's also part of our Forbes article. Since I'm a Forbes contributor, I've already written like around 10, more than 10 Forbes articles. And our first article was around this. And I think that really resonated with a lot of people, because they could see like their moms or their family members in that particular space of that what I was trying to help. And that is why it got them more interested in the product. So yeah, every time you're trying to pitch your product, especially in a social impact initiative, like try to tell the story like a backstory. It could be something that you have faced, it could be something that you know of, or it could be like a part of a community you can know of. Like always leave people with an image in their head of who you're trying to solve this problem for. And then yeah, like when you think about go to market strategies, especially for social impact ventures, there are multiple ways that you can think about. Like first is you can think about content creation. Like now that's like a huge thing. Like a lot of content creators are creating content on TikTok or Instagram reels. Utilize these platforms, and you can even hire influencers and then leverage their following. But you can ask them to kind of talk about the work, the product that you're building, especially if an influencer is in that social impact category, and they have a platform based around certain things that has happened, their experiences. If you can get them to speak about how your product is relevant to their platform and what they're trying to like build, like especially if they are in that particular space, I think that can really help to get your product out and about in the market. Then you can also just pitch to media, of course. Just go to like the Harrow Onet. There's a website where you can pitch to a reporter, and then basically get your word out on multiple news websites. Then like for example, what I did was I built a podcast where I would like bring in and interview people for returnships.org, and help them share their story of how they return to the workforce, or also domain level experts on how somebody can return to the workforce. I also like talked to various companies like Amazon and Audible, and brought them also on our platform, and kind of interviewed how they structure their returnships program. And I think that really helped in kind of reaching our audience, because they could see that not only I'm invested in building our product, but I'm also really looking for what they need more than what my company needs. And I think that can really resonate with a lot of people. Then you can also kind of sign up for a lot of speaking and conference, like go to different conferences and network as much as you can, like pitch to anybody and everybody, and you never know who can connect you to whom. So yeah, like keep pitching. And then think about like doing a beta launch before you actually launch, of course. Find like the people while you're speaking, see which segment it really resonates with, and those are your early adopters. So make sure that, really refine for that particular segment. And once you have put the product in hands of those early adopters, like collect those referrals and testimonials, like ask them to refer your product to other people, or, create, like, take their testimony. Like if you go on the returnships.org page, you'll be able to see they have listed like bunch of testimonials that I've gotten from multiple people. And I think that also helps to show that, okay, whatever I'm building that actually resonates with community is just not what I think is great, but other people also think is amazing. And then some of the next steps that you can think about, like when you're starting a social impact venture or project, is, blogging about, like, your entire experience, of course, like I mentioned, that can really help. Like you can create a Medium blog, or you can just blog on LinkedIn Pulse and kind of talk about what all of the learnings and what are some of the pain points in areas that you see. And I think that can also have a lot of organic reach with like the domain level experts in that particular area. Then think about whatever you're building, is that a product or a startup. Like oftentimes what you're building, it can be just a particular standalone product and not necessarily a startup. And you can understand that by writing out that business plan based on the framework that I told you about, and then kind of seeing that does it even fall in the startup category. And it's completely okay if it's just a product, that is also okay, but you need to make the distinction so that you can move ahead and kind of do things around that. Then think about, if it is a product, then how long you plan to, maintain and contribute to this product in the product life cycle. And then what are some of the features that are the most important, like the P0, the must haves, and the P1s would be like nice to have. Like make sure you have really you build out the basic MVP, like the P0 features, like the must haves, and then you ship it as early as you can, instead of waiting to refine and perfect your product. Because like I believe that oftentimes getting to the market first is one of the biggest things that can help you in gain traction with your customers. So yeah, like build out the P0 features, put it in hands of the customers, get the feedback, and then add your P1 features later, as you're iterating through your product life cycle. Then think about if it's something that can be like in tech, for the people who are from tech in this particular talk, if you can like open source, that's also another way that you can leverage the community, and that also can help you gain traction. Like for example, Project Fib, we open sourced it, even though it was like we were the first person to build it. And I think that helped us gain a lot of traction, because instead of like keeping that thing to ourselves, we by open sourcing we could leverage community from all across the world. And still today there are like so many universities who have done research, like taking our algorithm as like a starting point, and that has gotten us a lot of traction with our customers. So I think that could be another way you can leverage. And then think about, like when you're beginning your social impact venture, think about who are your co-founders, teammates, and then kind of divide them roles. Again, if you do not have certain people who you need to do a certain thing, like hire, and then define a time commitment, like every week or every day of, that you will be able to kind of put your heads down and get this thing done. I think that is also super important. Like, and make sure you have regular check-ins to see if people are continuing to iterate to build. And then it doesn't matter if you started the project with one person or the other, you can always like evaluate if those people are the right people for you, and make sure you have the time to like pitching and building your team. So yeah, I think these are all of some of my tips on how to like scale and build out the social impact ventures. Like happy to answer any questions for you. Meanwhile, if you already have a product, you can go to this website, nabanitafoundation.com, sign up for the members page, and you can create a blog post, like I mentioned, about the idea that you're building, and I would be more than happy to amplify it on all of our channels. And you can also connect with me on all of these links. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Nabanita. This was awesome. Thank you for sharing all your insights and just like how to build a social impact venture and the product. I think Ryan had a question. Ryan, would you like to unmute yourself and ask Nabanita the question?
You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, most of what you talked about were social impact ventures, kind of assuming a company and raising funding and stuff like that. Did you give any thought, or have you done any like not for profit side? So, is there, if it is a social impact thing, is there a downside to kind of being for profit and going down that route? And how would you kind of decide between which entity structure to choose?
I think I think you will have more success in general doing a non-profit, especially in areas where, because it can help you gain like not only of course giving back to people, but also it can help you gain more traction. And in general, I've noticed that in non-profit, like although you need like a board initially, but you can get a lot of volunteers, some really good companies to come volunteer for you, and you don't necessarily have to pay those volunteers, right? Because they are kind of providing their time and effort towards your initiative. So in general, I think you can start off by having a non-profit wing to gain a lot of traction, and then eventually if you do think that this is a business essentially, then you can create like a for-profit wing as well, right? Like you can have two separate things going on, where the non-profit essentially kind of gives your word out and helps a lot of people, and then brings out your customer to the hands of people, and then once it's kind of like in minds of everybody, then you can create like a for-profit wing. And you can do that by looking, when you're building the nonprofit, there'll be a lot of things that people would want. Like for example, when I was building returnships.org, I realized that people needed like somebody to train them to kind of onboard from going from like being in the kitchen thinking of returning back to the workforce, all the way to returning back to the workforce, right? Like they needed somebody like a career coach to kind of bridge the gap. So I think like for example, if I wanted, I could have kind of right now I just made it free, and I think that really helped, because I made the course free altogether, like the basic course that anybody can take, and that way I was able to like kind of understand who is the right. And then I also put a sign up sheet below the course saying that, hey, if you're interested, sign up below this, and we will get back to you on additional courses that we do release, or additional cohorts that will come up in the future. And I got so many leads because they were able to get value right when I built that. So I think you can make the transition like that. Like you can always have like a small non-profit wing, but you can then kind of leverage all the traffic they're getting from there into your for-profit wing, if that makes sense.
Nice, that's awesome. Yeah, didn't think about doing both. Then you get almost the pros and cons of both, and you could kind of move between depending on where your mission or what your operations are at any given time. So thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. I have another question. So just based on like returnships, could you shed a little bit more light on just any challenges or roadblocks that you've had when getting returnships up and running? And then also just the post part about it is that, what does the future of returnships look like? Like, what's your vision for your organization?
Yeah, I think there were like so many challenges because I have never worked in a non-profit space. So to be honest, I had no idea how to even, go about it and what are some of the aspects of it. And I think that another challenge is like the word returnship already was used by multiple companies. So it was because I like went around and I basically created a lot of traction around the word returnship and the news and the necessity to use that, by multiple companies, like creating their own returnship program. So it was already out there and so many other companies were using it, which was like a great win because, they were able to use it. But at the same time, it was often difficult to, show up in the Google search page that like our initiative, because other companies who have built out these initiatives, they like rank higher, of course. So initially I thought that it would be much harder to get the word out because of these other companies who are also building out, but they are doing it much later in the stage, in the sense that they are just hiring for people who are ready to interview, and they are actually hiring them, and they're providing this return to back opportunity at their company and hiring them, versus my approach was kind of making them ready to even sit at the so it was like pre-gaming to the returnship opportunities that these companies are giving out. And I think like I mentioned, right, the biggest challenge was how do I like returnship and all these things, it was becoming a saturated space. How do I stand out, I guess. And I think how I stood out in general was kind of like I mentioned, right, tying like a mission and the purpose and the story behind why I built what I built. I think, and then I think that really resonated with a lot of people in general to help me create traction for my website. Like when I pitched my, I remember the first time when I built this product, I put it on few Facebook groups that I'm part of. And I kind of told the story behind, how I was helping my family member. And, it was a lot of struggle. Again, another struggle was like the fact that, there was nobody else in the space. So oftentimes it becomes difficult to think about what does somebody want, because I personally, I don't have career gap, but I'm experiencing somebody who has like significant career gap, right? So I have experience of her, but how do I know what else other people want? I think so. Even creating the first product out there without, giving, like oftentimes, if you give out a early idea, it can be adopted by somebody else. They can get, like, of course, you want people to innovate, but if you're trying to get in the space, you have to build out something on your own initially to get it in the hands of people, and then you can iterate and build on. So I think that was another thing that, what are different aspects that somebody would need when they are going from stay at home caregiver to return to the workforce. And I think I like, I was diligent in like identifying all of the small problems that my family member was facing, and I kind of tried to build out an interface. And I think all of those were like huge challenges, because like since there was nothing like that before, I was like, okay, what do I build that really resonates? But then eventually I just built out this entire prototype, in over like a particular day, like over an evening. And then I pitched the idea, I put it out there, and I was like, if nobody uses it's fine. I just thought it would be a nice thing to have. And then like, because I told the story, there were so many people who messaged me after they saw my post, and they were like, oh my god, we totally resonate. We can see like, our moms, or we can see like, or a lot of moms reached out and they're like, oh, I had totally the same experience, and so amazing. And I think just tying that story, it really, and then that's why I made it like non-profit versus for, even though it could have been like a lot of people gave me feedback that this is a for-profit business, like why would you make it like a non-profit initiative? It doesn't, you are losing money, or you, but I think I wanted to like create an impact. And more than that, because all the amazing feedback from the community, and then there were so many people who just wanted to contribute, and they didn't want anything in return. They just wanted to contribute for free as a volunteer. And it made a lot of sense to create this as a non-profit, so it can be like, leveraged by community. I think the second part was also, like funding, in the sense that, do I how much funding do I put in? Do I need to hire people to do things? All of those things, I was not sure if this idea will fly or not. So by leveraging this community, I could like cut down hugely on hiring costs and things like that for a lot of different things. And then the next one was like marketing and getting the word out. So what I did was I went to different conferences, I pitched my talks to conferences, and oftentimes I was also like just invited straight up like a speaker. And that also like helped me generate a lot of uh, like get the word out even in a saturated space like this. And then eventually, Forbes also reached out and was like, hey, we would love to have you as a contributor on our website, without spending anything. We would love to have you there. I think that was another huge event for us, because we had already created that traction going forward. And then in general, like I mentioned, right, like because it was like where our name was also kind of like in different, like it was used by different companies. And that was also my intention starting this initiative, to generate awareness about this name, so that different companies can create their own returnship programs and eventually help people return to the workforce. I think all of those things like there were like multiple different challenges. um, I think going forward, like right now, it's named as Nabanita Day Foundation, because I believe that this is a small space that we have been impacting, but I believe that like we can impact so many different social venture initiatives in this particular space by kind of giving the word out, or creating content and awareness around these social like initiatives and issues that people face every day. Like for example, like mental health is also like a huge thing even for these caregivers who are returning to the workforce. Like there's a lack of mental health facilities for caregivers and children. Then there are like multiple things that we want to like. I work with multiple NGOs. So another thing I did was initially was I paired with a local NGO, and I went to their food drive. Basically, I was volunteering for their food drive, but I also printed out like pamphlets of returnships.org. And I put down like multiple career initiatives in that, and resources on how somebody can find a job, what they should do, how they can apply, what all some of the careers they can think of. And then when the NGO was donating the food to homeless people and to low income families, I also gave them my pamphlets along with it. I think that also like helped spread the word that, okay, like apart from food and the basic needs, you can also reskill these people so that tomorrow they can have jobs and they can also give back to the community. So I think you have to like think about like really creative ways to stand out in this particular space. Also, another thing I did is I also reached out to a TikTok celebrity who was like, so like I was scrolling through TikTok and I saw there was this particular influencer, like content creator, who was in the space, basically who was a domestic abuse victim, and she returned to work after like 2 years. And I used to follow her for a long time, but then suddenly it clicked that maybe I can ask her to like come speak at my platform, and kind of share our platform on her TikToks or on her social media pages. And she agreed, because she's like, not a lot of people actually reach out to me like directly like this, although she has like 1 million followers on TikTok, which was like crazy to me. And then yeah, she agreed, and it was like amazing talk, and she was also able to like share our platform on her social media pages. So yeah, I think like think about creative ways that you can use your community around you, like cross marketing, go to market, especially when something is like very very saturated. Think about how you can more think about how you can benefit other people, and the moment they can see value of the benefit that you're bringing, they will be more than happy to give you the platform or to amplify your platform, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Any other questions? Yes, Ryan, go ahead.
Sorry, I'll just keep asking questions unless someone else wants to jump in. How it seems like you have a lot of different balls in the air. How do you manage all of that? I mean, especially like a social impact thing or a not-for-profit. Thinking if I were to do something like that, it probably wouldn't be of the size and scale where you'd be able to like hire me full-time or hire a full-time team. And so, it's kind of easing into things on the side. I also, have kids, etc. Do you have any thoughts on how you best spend your time, or how much time you have to dedicate to some of these things to really get it off the ground?
I mean, to be honest with you, I was spending like all of my weekdays after work, after my work hours, building it, and all of my weekends initially in quarantine to get it up and running. So I did put like a lot of hours. It was like almost like my second job at that point. But I think if you want to, I think your thing should be like quickly build out a prototype, and then you can slowly iterate over multiple weeks. So you can. I believe that if you're trying to build something on the side and gain traction in general, you want to gain traction very soon in the first 3-4 months of building your product. Generally, because that can help translate into much more organic traction and people kind of following along in your journey. So I would say that in the first few months, put a lot of effort, like set aside time, like on the weekends or on the weekdays, maybe after work or even before work, like early hours, and then set that time, and then come up with a plan that, hey, like I mentioned, right, some of the P0 features that you want to get done for sure, make sure you build that out and then just release it, and then let it sit for a few weeks or months and collect and then talk to multiple people and see what kind of feedback they give. That way you're already, while you're talking to people and you're letting it sit on the app store or wherever, you are kind of already generating a lot of traction already, because people already have started to talk about the name of your product or what the product does, or identifying you as a domain expert in that particular. And then eventually you can build more and more and more. Another way you can do is you can also go to a hackathon, basically, where you can pitch. So that way you don't have to hire people, like you don't have to pay money, but you can go with your idea, you can pitch it at the hackathon, you can form a team, and you can build out a prototype in like 36 hours, right? Where you're not really paying anybody, you're getting co-founders for free, getting development for free, marketing for free, you just have to pitch your idea. You have to come up with a game plan of how you're gonna roll it end to end, and by the end of the hackathon, you'll be done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think but yeah, make sure that you have had a plan of how exactly you'll be iterating and how exactly you'll be building. You can also, for your first social impact project, you can also just open source that way. Open source is like you basically put your code on GitHub and you let anybody look at your code and contribute to it. That can also be another way of creating a world-class product without you doing all the legwork for that, right? A lot of people, if your idea is something that is really really awesome, a lot of people would want to contribute and start to become part of it. And then you can even create like a Discord channel for your open source project where people can kind of talk about what they want to build or add to your channel, and you can continue to build around that. So what I was trying to say is, like, you don't need to necessarily hire people essentially in the social impact space. You can easily have a lot of volunteers who are more than willing to contribute to this, just be part of this entire whatever you're building. Like, leverage students who are looking for internships, like, pitch your idea to first year and like freshman, senior, sophomore year students who are looking for side projects to do. They would be more than happy to like build things for you or be involved in some sort of extracurricular activity. So there are multiple ways you can go to market and leverage that hiring team without spending and sharing money. Awesome. Yeah. Is there any other question? Like, happy to answer them.
Give it 30 seconds and wait.
Yeah, if anyone is interested, I can drop my personal website on the chat. So I've kind of listed on how I built all of the stuff that I did build, which is not just returnships.org, but just everything else that I've also built over the years. Maybe it could be like, so I've also listed in hackathons what all I needed to get done to like get it up and running. So it's more like a blog. Feel free to like check it out. Maybe it can help.
Awesome. Looks like there are no more questions, but cool. Thank you so much for joining us, Nabanita. We appreciate you taking the time out and sharing just your experiences building in a social impact ventures and all the things that you've done so far. And all the best with everything else that you're working on.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day, all of you. Thank you, Harshita.
Take care. Bye.